There was a segment that I saw in which you were being critical of AOC for understating the degree to which I think it was the DSA and another group were involved in rallying her to victory. This is something I've actually gotten a lot of fights over this because I have a lot of, I guess, aspirations towards revolutionary theory, but I know the actual business of getting anything good done is like grimy and full of compromise and what have you. The squad, I guess, has been kind of a disappointment for me on two sides. One of which, of course, being I wish they had and have done more. I mean, obviously, I think most people who like AOC wish that. And at the same time, I feel like a lot of the criticisms they get are unwarranted because, like you have like the oh god, the force the vote business, or the idea that like they should be like causing a stir and arguing with everyone on every issue to like make sure all their goals are met. And there's like a realistic middle point that I don't know the location of because I'll never know what specific pressures they're subjected to behind the scenes. Do you think, and I know you talk about this in your book, do you think they get too bad of a rap amidst progressives, or do you think there's like a legitimate basis to that?
I think both. I do think that a lot of the criticism is unfair, but I do think that directionally, a lot of people were onto something. Like it was true that they worked a lot more closely with Democratic leadership and the rank and file Democrats than people expected that they would, and I think had reason to expect that they would. Like this was an advertised political revolution. You know, they're gonna knock down the house. So I think people had unrealistically high expectations, but understandably unrealistically high high expectations. The way I diagnosed the problem that the entire kind of left ecosystem has now, oftentimes, like she and the others, they are representatives. Like they want to represent the will of a movement, but oftentimes they didn't. There's no number you can call to find out, like, what are we doing next? Like, who's like, and so they often wanted to be led rather than kind of figure out how to lead. And then after the fact, there would be intense amounts of anger about whatever it was they did or didn't do, or a misunderstanding about what they were doing. Now you've got podcasters and YouTubers and people on Twitter who have various ideas about what people ought to do. I think Matt Christman at one point, I think the Chapo guy, smartly, I think, referred to it as talk radio, like sports talk radio, like the way that Philadelphia Eagles fans would say, you know, they need to be running the ball more, or, you know, they need better linebackers, like, or, you know, how are they not able to stop the run? And they all have opinions, but there's actually no relationship between the fans who are just talking and the coaches who are making actual decisions. Like they're just completely disconnected. And that is kind of what you have now. You've got YouTubers and podcasters and Twitter commentators and Blue Sky and Threads people who have thoughts on things, but there's no mechanism where those thoughts can be translated into any action. And part of that is because like the squad didn't really have much ability to translate what they wanted to do into action. But mostly it's because they're divorced.
Yeah, it does seem like things were a lot easier during the time when Bernie Sanders was like the unambiguous leader of the American left movement.
Yeah, and he's like, we're for Medicare for all. And then everybody's like, yeah, that's right. We're for Medicare for all. He's like, we're for free college.
Yeah, and
like, yes, we're
you can't
for free
get
college.
everything, but the cohesion is necessary. You know, like the right is so good at this. Like the right on a dime will pivot to a talking point or two or three or whatever, but they stick to that. You know, Christopher Rufo is always bragging about it. It's like critical race theory, or, you know, woke bathrooms, or this, that, the other, but they stick to it. You know. And it is true, the squad doesn't really have a unifying voice. AOC is the loudest of them. And, you know, I mean, she does her like Insta, right. I like those. I like the direct communication, but it's definitely not the same level of organization, I guess. There's not like that. Maybe it's because she's too young, that like studied, disciplined, like we are a borderline, like militantly organized group that is going to be loud and so on. Not literally militantly. I mean, just, you know, very lock shoulder, I guess. It's unfortunate. And it does feel like there does need to be better leadership, or that more effort could have been put there. The only thing that I worry about is that it feels like if there's another thing the right is really good at doing that we're kind of not, it's I don't think much of dishonesty, but they're really good at the crypto stuff, you know? Like there are a bunch of Nazis who act as staffers to prominent Republicans. Like they know what they want, they keep quiet, and they know like your average Republican, like let's say you've got a Republican who's like fully racist, right? They know that their elected representatives can't just go screaming the N-word, you know, on Capitol Hill, even if they want them to. So there's like a give and take, a compromise. You know, one day they'll get their lamppost hanging. But from the left, sometimes it feels like, you know, you have to be like a 24/7 communist to keep these people's favor. You have to be screaming about everything. You can't even denounce like the USSR. You know, it's controversial to say that Russia's bad. And in an environment like that, where there's infighting over stuff like that, fringe issues, and
yes,
I don't even know how you could be a leader unless you were an exceptional case like Bernie.
yeah, and the opposite prevails on the Democratic side. You actually have a lot of these progressive offices are staffed not by socialists, but by kind of careerist, centrist Democrats. Now, you do actually there as more Gen Alpha and Gen Z types are coming into Congress, coming to work as staff in Congress. I've noticed because I hear from a decent number of them as sources that like you are starting to have socialists, like, you know, people whose politics are left, working for kind of centrist Democrats. Like that's what the right has done for a long time, is that you got a moderate to slightly conservative Republican, and like you said, they'll have complete Nazis, crypto Nazis working for them. Whereas on the reverse, you'd have, you know, progressives who are the representative, but then they'd have kind of corporate friendly staff who are just looking to cash out and go to K Street eventually. But now you're starting to see some more movement oriented staff in there. So we'll see what that does. And actually, I think you've seen some of that manifest through particularly in the early days of the Gaza war, where you were seeing a lot of letters from staffers and resignations, and
Midwestern local Dems as well. Like in Wisconsin and Michigan, it feels like a lot of people there have been busting out their power level a bit. It's nice to see some of that, because it really does feel like we just talked about that with the ADL. Like sometimes when the gloves come off, it turns out, okay, no, like 80% of organizations in the United States are just run by like at best corporatists and at worst fascists, and they've kept quiet, and now it's time for them to take us seriously, and that's bad. And very rarely does the opposite happen, where an organization doubles down on being good. And the rare times that it does, I mean, you know, you take what you can get, I guess. Do you worry that, so I agree with you standards wise, right? What should be done. Do you worry that given how hard it is to be a progressive in Congress, you know, how few allies you have, how much Pelosi probably talked down to you, or, you know, now whatever. Do you think there's a concern that as we make it more difficult to be one, people just won't be one, that we will increase the pressure towards centrism because it means you're subjected to less scrutiny? I don't think that had anything to do with what Fetterman's doing right now. I think Fetterman's got his own like brain damage currently in operation, but I guess I could see that happening, where there's like an unwillingness to deal with all of that. It's so easy to be a centrist in Congress. You don't have to do anything.
But on the other hand, that's true, but there's a lot of anger out there, and a lot of people, and so just the material conditions that people are living in, the precarity, is producing like a lot of populist anger. And so if you're too centrist, you risk being on the business end of that. So, you know, while it's not easy to be on the progressive side because of the points that you made, you have problems if you go the other direction as well. But I do think actually that Elon Musk's neutering of Twitter has done what he wanted it to do. Like it has disempowered the louder voices on the left, on the online left, in a way that has probably, like if you're a left-wing member of Congress now, you probably hear a lot less grief from people for, and that's, you know, to me that's a bad thing. So I think pressure on people is good. You know, you got to keep people on their toes, but it probably makes life a little bit easier for them. And Musk was, you know, very deliberate in what he was trying to do, and he pulled it off so far. So I don't think, as far as I can tell, Threads and Blue Sky and those types of things aren't able to produce the same level of pressure.
I guess it's just Insta now. I mean, I don't use Instagram. My manager posts pictures there, but I don't. I know that it's very used, and I know there's a lot of young people on there. Twitter is fully cooked. Like when I scroll through Twitter now, it is like almost it's three groups. It's the far right, it's blue check marks who are engagement baiting, and it's ads for things bordering on pornography.
Yes.
and bots.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, it's done. It's dying, I guess. I don't know how it's going to limp forward. I have no idea how Instagram works. I guess I would hope that there's some kind of organic movement there, but Twitter was unique, you know. Nothing let there's no other environment where a politician or a diplomat can get very visibly talked over by somebody who posts nothing but like anime porn on their profile. That's magical. You know,
and it makes sense that a billionaire would destroy it because it was real populist, a true populist weapon against the elites. So,
yeah, it was the real town square. Like unironically, that was the closest we had. Right. He went after it.